I've always been a massive Naughty Dog fan. One of the first games I ever played was Crash Bandicoot on my PlayStation 1, and I played numerous titles in that franchise, especially Crash Team Racing. My favorite PlayStation 2 franchise was Jak and Daxter, and my favorite PlayStation 3 franchise was Uncharted. In fact, the plane sequence in Uncharted 3 made me want to buy my PlayStation 3 in the first place. I feel like I grew up being a fan of this company, and when I heard they were releasing a new game, I was completely on board. It was extremely difficult to avoid watching any gameplay from the day it launched till the day the disc arrived at my house. I was desperate to play it, and when I finally did, within the first few moments, I knew I was in for a ride. It was an experience like no other. I remember my hands being sweaty and shaking. I couldn't stop playing it. I truly immersed myself in that story with those characters. I remember fearing for the main characters' lives throughout the entire game, even though I knew they wouldn't die in the end. And when I heard they were adapting this game, I was extremely worried. The show, produced by HBO and run by Craig Mazin alongside the creative director of the original game, Neil Druckmann, premiered on January 15th, 2023, with 2 episodes released initially. The idea, according to Neil, came during a conversation. Honestly, it was a really good idea because I was trying to convince my girlfriend to play the game with no success.
It was nice when Craig and I had lunch one day and we're like, what if it wasn't a movie? What if it was a TV show?
I remember the internet loving those first episodes unequivocally. At the time, there were many doubts surrounding the show due to all the controversy brought by the second game. But surprisingly, those first 2 episodes seemed very faithful, not just to the game's events, but to the original idea that made me want to play it years ago. After seeing the first scenes with that great premise, I was completely on board with it.
So if that happens,
we lose.
I subscribed to HBO for a year so I could follow the show weekly because it was impossible for the show to disappoint me, right? Right? My goal with this video isn't to call Naughty Dog's latest productions woke garbage, though I won't pretend they're not. But I'll list the things that would make even a very bad show a lot more enjoyable than what we got. The series had a relatively easy task: adapt a game that was already focused on realism and storytelling. At minimum, they just needed to show the cutscenes so that audiences who don't play video games could appreciate this work of art. But many narrative elements that were carefully designed to help telling the story in a more interesting way were absent from the series. One of these was the hard cuts. This feature not only translated Joel's refusal to talk about the things that marked him, but also illustrated how the traumas remained vivid during the journey, just accumulating in the protagonist's memories. Ellie always tried to talk to Joel about the people she'd lost, about Tess, Riley, Sam.
About Tess.
You don't bring up Tess. Ever.
But Joel would always cut her off. They never had those conversations. The closest we've got was this scene here.
Well, no matter how hard you try, I guess you can't escape your past.
The absence of this feature was one of the things that deeply bothered me in the series. For example, in Henry's death scene, you see him pointing the gun at his own head, hear his body fall, Ellie saying, "Oh my God," and cut. In the series, we get an extra scene of them burying Henry and Sam while they take the time to digest it, which unnecessarily slows the pacing. This feature made these characters' deaths extremely impactful for me in the game. Also, the series would hard cut till the next week's episode and would have made a great hook keeping people interested. Watch this. Showing what could happen if things go wrong. When you fail and die in the game, you can see what would happen to the protagonist, being torn apart, eaten, or beaten. The series doesn't have this. In the Left Behind DLC, we were introduced to conflicts between infected and hunters. This idea was used very well in the second game too, and this would have given the live action a great opportunity to show what we're dealing with. We could have got at least some prologues in each episode showing some stories, like Ish's story that we learned through notes found in the game, about a character very similar to Joel who was closed off to people but decided to give them a chance, which almost cost his life. That would have made a great episode and a great way to contextualize the world. Instead of a horror episode showing the world decaying while we follow a man living alone in dark tunnels that later gets overrun by infected, We got two gay bearded guys growing strawberries and dying together. Great choice, Neil. God damn it. Crafting. Even though this is primarily a gameplay mechanic, we never see the protagonists hunting for supplies or useful items for their journey. The only scene I remember was they getting some stuff at Bill's place. If they weren't going to show Joel crafting a molly, they could at least have shown them looking for food or clothes more often. This would have given a sense of scarcity and desperation to the show, and its absence was sorely felt. Another example is from the second game, where they introduced animations for weapon upgrades, making it very cinematic. The way Joel modifies gun parts would have looked great in the series. The game's HUD system was designed to let players craft items quickly without leaving the action. With 2 button presses, you could make a Molotov and then throw it at enemies. The show doesn't have a single scene like this. At least, there could have been a scene of Joel finding a larger magazine for his guns or a scope for his rifle. These small touches would have made a huge difference. Protagonism. One of the most striking things about the game for me is that you're stuck to Joel and Ellie's viewpoint. More often, Joel's perspective. You only know what they know, and you fear what they fear. This makes players connect a lot more with the protagonists. But in the series, they focus too much on other characters. For example, the episode with David would have been more intense if we'd only seen Ellie's perspective, not just tell right away their motivations. And I won't even get into the episode dedicated to gay fanfiction that completely mischaracterized one of the game's best characters. Not because he was gay, but because he wasn't a paranoid lunatic. It's more compelling to journey solely with Joel and Ellie without over-contextualizing other characters. Neil Druckmann himself said in an interview that it wouldn't make sense to have another game where Joel and Ellie weren't the protagonists because it was their story, yet the series had multiple episodes where they weren't the focus. For example, the section with Henry and his brother. We see their story unfold, but the series' protagonists aren't even present. The point of the game's story was not the series of unfortunate events, but the relationships you develop with other characters through the main protagonists. But I got a feeling that writers forgot that for the show. One thing the series undeniably improved was making Sam deaf. This opened up so many opportunities, similar to A Quiet Place, but they simply didn't utilize it. They had everything set up to do something brilliant and unprecedented, but it went nowhere. That's why people call it woke garbage, because a lot of stuff is really underdeveloped and thrown in the show in a very poor way. Let me illustrate my point by bringing up Metal Gear Rising, which was an excellent game even though the right-wing politicians and the capitalist system was critiqued through the game. But it made such a good fucking point, and it was a real joy to play through all of that. But here, representation is regurgitated in the text and you're supposed to like it. And I refuse to talk about the commune scene where Tommy is bitched by his husband.
So, communism. Nah, it ain't like that.
It is that, literally. This is a commune. We're communists.
Close call escape scenes. One of my favorite things to do during gameplay was not killing all enemies but barely escape them and barricading doors behind me. This made the game feel much more immersive, like I was truly at a disadvantage. This approach also helped conserve resources and reduces the risk of death, at least for someone like me who was not a pro player. I remember the show making something like that in the Henry episode, but this concept was supposed to be abused in the show because it was made bearing in mind the realism, and people claimed that seeing Joel killing an army just by his own wasn't realistic. So maybe escaping them would be better than barely having enemies at all during the whole show. You are in a post-apocalyptic world, and yet you can just walk around the country with minimal to no danger. Again, good fucking choice. I think we had the show like that because someone, probably Neil, almost took the infected out of the game to make it more real. They were afraid that having something monster-like would take people out of the immersion, but it was one of the things that made a lot of people fall in love with the game.
World and make it so realistic. Maybe we shouldn't have anything that could be perceived as a monster. Maybe by just having an infection that just killed people, and it's all about humans and how they deal with this post-apocalyptic society and how different people decide to survive. Maybe that would be enough.
For a show that has monsters in it, we don't have a lot of monsters because there's no gameplay when you're watching a show.
Bro never heard of The Walking Dead. In the game developing process, Neil was the creative director, but we had Bruce Straley as the game director, so maybe that helped Neil not fucking things that early.
And the creative director and the game director are the core of the team that have to really see eye to eye.
That's why you have dads balance between like Bruce and Nihil, and Nihil's gonna try to push the just the story and the characters, and Bruce is going to try to push that with just the gameplay as well. And so it's kind of like those guys are just trying always to find the right balance between the two. It's a very delicate process.
Not having a remarkable character. Having Joel being this vulnerable and sensible from the start completely ruins the development he should have. From the beginning of the show, we see him laughing, smiling, and chatting with Ellie, but this was supposed to be a subtle development. From the start of the game, he is not really into small talk, but at the end, he is telling Ellie he's child dreams.
Well, when I was a kid, I used to want to be a singer.
Also, he is too kind to most people. Joel shows his strengths by killing, torturing, surviving, and lying.
I swear.
He does what he needs to do in order to survive and protect the ones he loves. And I loved the confidence they had with him in the game. But here, it's like they don't want to scare casual viewers off. I didn't feel like this was Joel at all. Part of it was because Pedro Pascal seems like a really kind person, and I don't think the showrunners got the right side of him. Remember this scene where the old couple mock him?
Why did you shoot him?
The gun's all the way over there. He didn't hurt me, by the way.
Yeah, I got eyes.
That's straight disrespect to the original character. I won't say nothing about Bella Ramsey's appearance in comparison to Ellie, but in the game, she is not that annoying.
She's a girl, she can't handle it.
Also, she is not just annoying, she is cute and kind and childish. But in the show, she swears a lot. Watching the series makes me think either I misunderstood something profoundly, or someone expressed themselves very poorly. Look, copying scenes from the game one-to-one into the series isn't adaptation. It's fan service. Adaptation would mean translating gameplay elements into live action. The game is already a linear, narrative-focused experience. Adapting it shouldn't have been this hard, especially for the people who made it so good at the first try. Did I forget something you would want to see in the show? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching this far, and I plan to make another video after the end of Season 2 to share my thoughts. So consider subscribing, and I'll see you in the next video.